Karen's scream ripped through the neighborhood, a banshee wail like a cat frying on a live wire, which wasn't far off, given the jolt that sent her airborne. Her margarita arced gracefully, splattering across my freshly mowed lawn as she flailed, her feet barely grazing the pool before electricity zapped her into a mid-air tumble. She hit the water with a splash, her shriek morphing into a garbled mess of shock and outrage. The HOA party, her loyal minions, froze, gaping as their queen of petty tyranny floundered. I leaned back on my patio, sipping lemonade, watching chaos bloom like a weed in her perfect little empire. It was poetic, really, justice with a chlorinated twist. But this wasn't just about a pool gone rogue. It was war, sparked the day Karen moved in and decided my life was her personal punching bag. It started small, a drip of annoyance that swelled into a flood. First came a passive-aggressive letter nitpicking my garbage bins, parked an inch too far from the curb, apparently a capital offense. Then a fine for my grass daring to vary in shade, followed by threats. My mailbox was too modern. My car clashed with her aesthetic vision. My silent dog was somehow too loud. From day one, Karen pegged me as the villager to torment, her mission to grind me down with her HOA clipboard. I brushed it off until she crossed the line that turned petty into personal. She didn't just use my pool once or twice. She claimed it like a conqueror, strutting in with guests as if my backyard were her private resort. Wet footprints greeted me after work, my water level suspiciously low, but I let it slide, until the Saturday I came home to a full-on invasion. I pulled into my driveway craving quiet, only to find an HOA pool party in full swing. Music blaring, strangers laughing, Karen sprawled on my pricey lounge chair like a sun-baked dictator. 30 people I'd never met splashed in my pool, raided my outdoor bar, and flipped my steaks on my grill. A kid dunked another near the deep end, oblivious to the mayhem. I stood there, stunned, as my blood pressure spiked. "Karen," I said, voice tight, "why are there 30 people in my backyard?" She barely glanced up from under her oversized hat. "Oh, Ethan, don't be such a grump. The community deserves to enjoy this lovely space. It's a waste to keep it to yourself." I scanned the scene, my furniture stained, my pool murky with sunscreen and beer, and forced a smile that felt like a snarl. "You need to leave." She sighed, swatting at me like I was a fly. "Oh, come on, it's just a few hours. You should be happy to contribute." "Contribute?" I echoed, my eye twitching. "This is my private property." She didn't flinch, just smirked. "Relax, Ethan, don't be selfish. We voted, the HOA agrees your pool should be accessible." I blinked. "You can't vote to steal my property." She laughed, airy and infuriating. "It's not stealing, it's sharing." My fists clenched. "Karen, if you and your guests aren't gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the cops." Her smugness faltered, just a crack. "Oh, don't be ridiculous, you wouldn't." I pulled out my phone. "Try me." Silence stretched taut. She pursed her lips, stood, adjusted her sunglasses, and huffed. "Fine, but this attitude won't go unnoticed at the next meeting." Her posse slunk out, glaring, leaving my yard a wreck. I locked the gate, sat by my ruined pool, and seethed. This wasn't over. It was war, and Karen was about to meet her match. The wreckage of Karen's pool party fueled a fire in me that wouldn't die. My backyard, my sanctuary, reduced to a sticky mess of margarita stains and broken furniture. As her guests slithered out, tossing me dirty looks, I locked the gate and sat by the murky water, plotting. She crossed a line, and I wasn't about to let her waltz back in like my pool was her personal playground. Security cameras were my first thought, catch her in the act, build a case, but that was too passive. I needed something immediate, something to stop her cold. Scrolling online late that night, nursing a grudge and a coffee, I stumbled on it, electricity. Not enough to fry her, I'm no monster, but a harmless jolt, a lesson in boundaries. It was legal, doable, and downright hilarious. Game on. I spent the next week tinkering, turning my pool into a fortress with a bite. A little electrical engineering, a hidden switch, and some careful wiring, nothing lethal, just a zap to make her think twice. I tested it myself, dipping a toe in and bracing for it. The shock hit sharp, quick, like static on steroids, making me jump and laugh through gritted teeth. Perfect. It'd startle, not harm, and that's all I needed. I flipped the switch off, sat back, and waited. Karen wouldn't resist. She was too stubborn, too entitled. Sure enough, the next Saturday I heard my gate creak. Peeking through the blinds, I saw her strut in, oversized hat and designer swimsuit, margarita in hand, oblivious as ever. I grabbed my lemonade, stepped onto the patio, and flipped the switch. Showtime. She dipped a manicured toe into the water, zap. Her scream tore through the air, a high-pitched yelp as she jerked back, slipping on the wet concrete. Arms flailed, her drink launched skyward, and she tumbled into the pool with a graceless splash, a walrus in a designer bikini. The HOA guests, back again, uninvited, erupted in chaos. Some froze, horrified, others scrambled to help, but Karen was too busy thrashing and gasping, her dignity sinking faster than her margarita glass. I sipped my lemonade, biting back a grin as the neighborhood watched her flounder. Justice tasted tart and sweet, a cold splash of payback. She clawed her way out, dripping and livid, her eyes locking onto me with pure venom. The crowd dispersed, muttering, leaving her to stew in her soggy defeat. But Karen wasn't the type to slink away. She was a cockroach, resilient and relentless. The next morning, her pounding on my door jolted me awake, a furious rhythm that screamed trouble. I groaned, dragged myself downstairs, and cracked the door to find her, hair still frizzy from her swim, lips a thin line of rage. "You electrocuted me?" she spat, trembling with indignation. I raised an eyebrow. "You broke into my backyard," she scoffed. "It's not breaking in if the gate's unlocked." I stared deadpan. "Karen, you realize how insane that sounds, right?" She crossed her arms, unyielding. "You set an illegal trap. You could have killed me." I leaned on the doorframe, unfazed. "It's a harmless deterrent, like a static shock from carpet. You're fine." She jabbed a finger at me, her eye twitching. "You'll regret this." With that, she spun around, kicked over my potted plant like a petulant kid, and marched off. I sighed, rubbing my face. This wasn't over, it was escalating, and Karen was just warming up. I'd zapped her pride, and now she'd come for mine. Karen's plant-kicking exit was a declaration of war, and I knew her next move would be as petty as it was predictable. Hours after her tantrum, a formal HOA notice slid under my door, accusing me of endangering the community with hazardous property modifications. The audacity was almost art. She'd trespassed, thrown parties, and gotten a well-deserved zap, yet here she was, playing victim. I nearly laughed, but instead I flipped her game. I drafted my own complaint: trespassing, property violation, unauthorized gatherings, complete with security footage of her waltzing into my yard like it was hers. Crystal-clear evidence, time-stamped and undeniable, sent straight to the HOA board. If she wanted a fight, I'd hit back harder. An emergency meeting was called, and I showed up early, coffee in hand, ready for the showdown. Karen stormed in, face flushed with righteous fury, the board trailing behind her like reluctant ducklings. Most looked uneasy, probably because they'd been sipping my beer at her last bash. She launched into a tirade, painting me as a reckless menace, tossing around hazardous and negligence like a prosecutor on a budget. I waited, sipping my coffee, until it was my turn. Standing, I flipped on the meeting room TV where I'd cued my footage. The screen lit up, Karen and her posse laughing, drinking, dunking kids in my pool, all uninvited. Then came the money shot, her toe hitting the water, the zap, the flail, the splash. Stifled laughs rippled through the room as her face turned beet red. I smiled innocently. "I own this property, I maintain it, I have full rights. Karen thinks she's entitled to it despite being told no. Now she's mad because she faced a consequence." Silence fell, heavy and awkward. Even her usual allies squirmed. One board member coughed. "Well, technically, Ethan's right, he has privacy rights." Karen's glare could have melted steel, but I pressed on. "And while we're on safety, let's talk damages from her party: broken furniture, clogged filter, stolen drinks. Should we discuss compensation?" Her jaw clenched so tight I half expected teeth to fly. The board fumbled, caught between her ego and the obvious. After some muttering, they ruled Karen had no claim to my property, and further trespassing would mean consequences. They softened it to save her face, but the verdict was clear: she'd lost. She stormed out, shoes clicking like gunfire, and I resisted a smirk. Victory, round one. But Karen didn't slink away. She doubled down with petty vengeance. Over the next week, complaints piled up. My mailbox was offensive, my car an eyesore, my grass a threat to aesthetics. Each was flimsier than the last, a tantrum in paperwork. I escalated too, planting a massive sign by my gate: "Private property, trespassers will be zapped." The neighborhood buzzed, folks sick of her antics loved it. Even board members cracked smiles they couldn't hide. Karen, though, was apoplectic. A few nights later, I caught her skulking around my house with a flashlight, hunting for dirt. I flicked on the porch light, leaning out. "Something I can help you with, Karen?" She jumped, stammering. I was checking for code violations." I tilted my head. "At 11 at night." Her mouth flapped, then she bolted, flashlight bouncing wildly. I grinned. She was unraveling, but this war was far from done. Karen didn't quit, she festered. I'd humiliated her and she'd come back swinging. Good. I was having too much fun to stop now. Karen's late-night flashlight fiasco only stoked the flames. She wasn't retreating, she was reloading, and I could feel her spite simmering from across the street. The next morning, a fresh HOA violation notice was taped to my door, accusing me of creating an unsafe environment endangering neighborhood well-being. The hypocrisy was rich. She'd trespassed, trashed my yard, and now cried foul over a zap she'd earned. I crumpled it, tossed it, and smirked. Her paper threats were toothless, and she knew it. If she thought petty complaints would break me, she'd misjudged my stamina. I was in this for the long haul, and her next move proved she was too. That afternoon, a tow truck rolled into my driveway, and there stood Karen, arms crossed, smirking like she'd already won. Confused, I stepped out. "This vehicle violates HOA Code 4B9, she announced, practically humming with glee. I blinked. "What?" She gestured to my car. "It's considered abandoned if parked over 72 hours. I stared, then at my car, driven yesterday. "Are you serious?" The tow driver shifted, uneasy. "Sir, got proof you've used it." Without a word, I pulled up security footage on my phone, me driving off less than 24 hours ago. I showed him, and he sighed, shrugging at Karen. "No violation here." Her smirk vanished as the truck roared to life and peeled out. "Wait, you can't just leave," she sputtered, but it was gone. I turned to her, grinning. "You're getting desperate." Her face flushed, eye twitching. "This isn't over," she hissed, flip-flops smacking as she stormed off. She was cracking, and I loved it. That night, an email from the HOA board hit my inbox. Karen had filed a lawsuit against me. Reckless endangerment, emotional distress, the works. I laughed out loud. Her ego was writing checks her evidence couldn't cash. She had nothing but bruised pride and a grudge, but I wasn't just defending anymore. I forwarded my footage, complaints, and a gem. A text where she'd bragged about using my pool uninvited. The HOA lawyer shut her down fast, a curt "no case" reply. But I wasn't done. I filed my own lawsuit, trespassing, harassment, property damage, with a bill for my ruined furniture, clogged filter, and cleanup. It wasn't about the money, it was about the point. When she got the court notice, she snapped, marching to my door, fists clenched, voice shrill. "You can't sue me." I leaned on the frame, cool as ice. "Why not?" Because I'm on the HOA board," I smirked. "Not for long." Her eyes widened as I flashed my phone, a petition signed by fed-up neighbors demanding her removal from the board. Her fines, rules, and power trips had worn them thin, and my zap had lit the fuse. "What do you mean?" she stammered, paling. "This is justice," I said, pocketing the phone. She recoiled, speechless, as the weight sank in. The next HOA meeting was a spectacle. Karen sat rigid, glaring as the board read the petition aloud. The room brimmed with homeowners she'd tormented, their stories spilling out like a dam breaking. The vote was a landslide. She was out. She leapt up, knocking over her water bottle, screeching, "You're all making a mistake. I built this HOA." I couldn't resist. "You mean you made it unbearable?" Laughter rippled, her glare locked on me. "You did this," I shrugged. "You did it to yourself." With an inhuman wail, she grabbed her purse and slammed out, rattling the walls. Round two, mine. But Karen wasn't done. She was just getting creative. Karen's dramatic exit from the HOA meeting didn't signal surrender. It was a regroup, a storm brewing behind her slammed door. She'd lost her title, but not her venom, and I knew she'd strike back with whatever scraps of spite she could muster. For a moment, I savored the win. Her reign was crumbling, my pool was mine again, and the neighborhood buzzed with relief. But peace was a mirage with Karen around. She went quiet for a day, just long enough to make me wonder, then unleashed her next salvo, petty sabotage. Trash cans tipped over by my curb, a stray bag of dog crap on my lawn, eggs splattered across my car. Childish, yes, but unmistakably her. She was testing me, daring me to snap, and I wasn't about to let her win by default. I upped my game, installing a second security cam angled right at my driveway. Catch her, end her. 2 nights later, it paid off. Grainy footage of Karen, hooded like a budget burglar, scattering trash across my property. I uploaded it to the neighborhood Facebook group with a caption, "Karen's new hobby, guess she misses my pool." The response was instant. Laughs, outrage, demands she leave for good. By morning, her blinds were shut tight, her porch deserted. The HOA board, swamped with complaints, sent her a cease and desist, warning of legal action if she kept harassing residents. It was a gut punch she'd overreached, and even her last allies bylaid. A for sale sign popped up in her yard days later, a white flag in her war of attrition. She was done, or so I thought. The moving truck rolled in a week later, and I watched from my patio, lemonade in hand, as movers hauled her life away. Corinne avoided my gaze, her body stiff with humiliation, gripping the steering wheel like it owed her money. Just before pulling out, she rolled down her window and fixed me with a final glare. "I hope you rot in this neighborhood," she spat. I smiled, inhaling the crisp, Corinne-free air. "I think I'll be just fine." She peeled out, tires squealing, and vanished into the dusk. The war was over. She'd lost her throne, her dignity, and now her home. My pool sparkled in the sunlight, my lawn pristine, my peace restored. I'd zapped her out of my life, and it felt glorious. But victory wasn't just her exit, it was what followed. The neighborhood shed her shadow like a bad dream. Backyards hummed with late-night laughter, mailboxes sprouted wild colors, and the HOA limped on, too battered to flex. My sign, "Trespassers will be zapped," stayed up, a trophy and a warning, though the zapper was off now, its job done. Neighbors waved more, some slipping me nods of thanks. "You broke her," one said, grinning. I shrugged. I hadn't set out to be a hero, just to keep what was mine. Corinne had pushed, I'd pushed back with a jolt and a lawsuit, and she'd crumbled. As I sat by my pool that evening, the water still and clear, I reflected on the absurdity of it all. A petty tyrant, a rigged pool, and a war one with a little electricity and a lot of nerve. The quiet was mine again, and no one would dare touch it. Corinne's taillights faded into the distance, and the neighborhood exhaled, a collective sigh of relief that rippled through the streets like a breeze after a storm. Her "for sale" sign stood crooked in her yard, a monument to her defeat, and I leaned back on my patio, savoring the stillness. My pool gleamed, free of her greasy fingerprints, and my zapper sign loomed as a quiet sentinel. No need to flip the switch now, but its legend lingered. The HOA was a husk, its rules unenforced, its board too shell-shocked to care. Neighbors reclaimed their quirks, purple shutters, wind chimes, late-night barbecues, and I faded into the background, content with my victory. I'd beaten her at her own game, and the calm felt like a prize I'd earned twice over. But Corinne's shadow wasn't gone yet. A week later, whispers trickled back. She hadn't moved far, just a few blocks over, still within HOA reach. I rolled my eyes, typical Corinne, clinging to the fringes like a moth to a dying flame. Then came the rumors. She was sniffing around, asking about my pool, muttering about unfinished business. A neighbor tipped me off over the fence. She, saying your zapper's still a hazard, trying to stir up trouble. I groaned, the peace I'd tasted souring. She had no power, no platform, but Corinne didn't need those. She had obsession, and I was her fixation. I'd hoped her move was a surrender, but it was a tactical retreat. She was plotting, and I wasn't about to let her creep back into my life. I doubled down, rigging a motion sensor light by my gate, bright enough to blind, harmless enough to dodge any complaints. The next night it worked. A flash caught her skulking near my fence, flashlight in hand, hunting for ammo. She yelped, stumbled, and bolted as the beam lit her up like a deer in headlights. I grinned from my window. She was rattled, and I was ready. The neighborhood caught wind fast. Someone posted, "Corinne's back, Spotlight Edition," online, and the laughs piled up. She went dark again, blinds shut, but I knew she wasn't done. A few days later, a new notice hit my mailbox. No HOA seal, just her typed drivel claiming my light disrupted community peace and demanding its removal. I tossed it, unfazed. She was grasping at straws, and I had concrete on my side. I decided to end it for good. I called a neighborhood meeting, casual, at my place with beers and a point. 24 showed up, tired of her ghosting around. I laid it out, her trespassing, her lawsuits, her trash-throwing tantrums, all on tape. "She's got no claim here," I said, "but she won't stop unless we make her." They nodded, fed up. Her reign had scarred them too. We drafted a group letter to the HOA and the city, demanding a no-contact order, harassment, plain and simple. Signatures stacked up, and I dropped it off myself, footage attached. The response was swift. A legal warning landed at her new address, barring her from my property or any HOA meddling. Her comeback fizzled before it could spark. She was out of moves, and I'd checkmated her with a spotlight and a pen. The war wasn't just over, it was buried. The legal warning hit Corinne like a brick wall, and for once her silence held. No skulking, no notices, just the hum of a neighborhood finally rid of her buzzsaw presence. My pool stayed pristine, my zapper sign a relic of triumph, and the motion sensor light stood guard untested. The HOA letter and city backing had done it. Her claws were clipped, her vendetta legally caged. Neighbors grinned wider now, their yards sprouting wilder quirks, gnome armies, neon birdhouses, free from her shadow. I'd sip coffee on my patio, watching the world turn without her meddling, and it felt like breathing clean air after years in a smog-choked cell. She'd pushed me to the edge, and I'd shoved her off it, zap by zap, lawsuit by lawsuit, until she had nowhere left to land. But Karen's defeat wasn't just her absence, it was the ripple. The HOA, already limping, crumbled further, meetings dwindled to a handful of bored holdouts, and rules faded into suggestions no one followed. My stunt had cracked the dam, people stopped fearing fines and started living. One guy even thanked me over a beer. "You killed the beast, man, we owe you." I shrugged, just wanted my pool back, but the truth was bigger. I'd broken her grip on all of us. The footage, the petition, the spotlight, it wasn't just petty revenge. It was a uprising, and she'd been its tyrant queen. Her for sale sign stayed up unsold, a mocking tombstone to her reign. She was gone, but not forgotten, not yet. Then came the twist. A month later, a letter arrived, not from her, but a lawyer 2 towns over. Karen had filed a last-ditch claim, some nonsense about emotional damages from the zap, demanding compensation. I laughed, picturing her pitching this to anyone who'd listen. My lawyer shut it down fast. My footage, the HOA ruling, the no-contact order, buried it in hours. Frivolous, he called it, and she got slapped with a warning for wasting court time. I mailed her a copy of the dismissal with a note. "Try a new hobby." No reply, but her sign vanished the next week. Sold or surrendered, I didn't care. She'd run out of rope, and I'd cut the last strand. The neighborhood didn't just move on, it thrived, her name a punchline at barbecues. Reflecting on it, the war felt surreal. A pool, a zapper, and a woman so drunk on power she couldn't see the cliff. Karen had sized me up as a pushover, thought her HOA crown made her untouchable. That first party, her smug, its sharing line lit the fuse. I didn't just fight for my yard, I fought for sanity. The zap was petty genius, the lawsuits a checkmate, and every petty jab she threw back just dug her deeper. I'd turned her game against her, and she'd lost everything: board, seat, house, pride. As I lounged by my pool, the water still and mine alone, I grinned at the absurdity. March 20, 2025, and the air was Karen-free. She'd never zap back, and I'd won more than a pool. I'd won quiet, and no one would dare steal it again. Karen's final legal flop marked the end of her crusade, and the neighborhood settled into a peace I hadn't known since she'd rolled in with her clipboard and entitlement. My pool sparkled under the March sun, the zapper long since retired, its sign a weathered badge of victory. Trespassers will be zapped, now just a quirky relic. The HOA was a ghost, its meetings abandoned, its rules ignored. My war had gutted it, and no one mourned. Yards bloomed with chaos, tacky flamingos, loud wind chimes, and I loved it, the freedom she'd choked out now thriving in her absence. I'd sip lemonade on my patio, watching kids bike past and feel the weight of her gone. She'd lost it all, power, home, dignity, and I'd won it back, jolt by jolt, until she'd had no choice but to flee. Her for sale sign disappearing was the last I'd see of her. No goodbye, no final glare, just a moving truck and silence. Rumors said she'd slunk to a condo across town, far from our block, licking her wounds. I didn't care, out of sight, out of mind. The neighborhood didn't just recover, it reinvented itself. People waved more, barbecues stretched into the night, and my pool stayed mine, a quiet oasis no one dared invade. At one cookout, a neighbor raised a glass to Ethan, the zapper king who slew the dragon. I laughed, clinking back, just wanted my stakes unflipped. But the truth lingered. I'd sparked a revolt, and Karen's empire had burned. Her name faded to a joke, a cautionary tale for busybodies everywhere. Looking back, it was a wild ride, a petty spat ballooning into a suburban epic. Karen had pegged me as prey, her first letter about my bins a gauntlet I didn't know I'd pick up. That pool party, her smug community deserves it line flipped a switch. I'd zapped her, sued her, spotlighted her, and watched her crumble. Every move she made, I countered harder, turning her power into a punchline. The zap was my spark, the lawsuits my hammer, and the petition my knockout blow. She'd underestimated me, and I'd reveled in proving her wrong. As I lounged by my pool, the water still as glass, I marveled at it. March 20, 2025, a date carved in quiet triumph. She'd come for my peace, and I'd sent her packing, tail between her legs. Now the calm was mine, unbreakable. My pool shimmered, my lawn stayed mowed, and no one knocked with fines or threats. The zapper was off, the cams unneeded, my war was won, and the scars were trophies. A kid rode by waving, I waved back, content to let the legend fade. Karen was gone, her reign a memory I'd toast to when the mood struck. I leaned back, the sun warm, the air clean, and grinned. She'd hoped I'd rot here, but I was thriving, pool, property, pride intact. The war had been absurd, electric, and mine to win. As the crickets chirped and the day eased into dusk, I took a sip, savoring the silence. No one would trespass again, not her, not anyone. I'd made damn sure of that, and it felt glorious.